much for coming this morning for this day-long discussion on the glories of Lord Krishna. We've just heard a nice session from Sutta Prabhu on the spirit of dedication, the spirit of wanting to share Krishna consciousness, to share the mercy of the Acharyas and the Lord to everybody in this preaching movement. For us, our goal is to experience Vrindavan and to make everyone experience Vrindavan. That is the purport, or that is the purpose for which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advented in this world. He wanted to relish the love of the Brajavasis for him, specifically the love of Srimati Radharani. The love of the Brajavasis is so exalted, so pristine, so transcendently blissful that even Krishna cannot understand what it is that they actually experience. What kind of happiness do they feel when they serve me and love me? Krishna thinks, even I do not experience this kind of happiness that my devotees in Vrindavan are experiencing. So then, very eager to understand and relish that love, that happiness, Krishna comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And additionally, he thinks, why should I just keep it to myself? I want to spread and share this mood of Vrindavan with everyone all over the world. And our Hare Krishna movement is based on this principle of relishing and sharing Vrindavan. As part of the process of relishing and sharing Vrindavan, we hear about, read, speak about, and think about, and worship all the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan. We were discussing briefly this morning in the Bhagavatam class in the temple in Radha Gokulananda Mandir that the spiritual world is complete and perfect. And all the different forms of the Supreme Lord are also complete and perfect. But on the platform of completeness and of perfection, there are also gradations. There is something like perfect, more perfect, even more perfect, most perfect, most perfect, mostest perfect. And you can go on and on and on, because perfection is an unending phenomenon, especially in the spiritual world. But broadly speaking, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches that the forms of Krishna who appear in Vaikuntha, in the four-armed forms of Lord Narayan, where the mood of devotion is predominated by a sense of awe and reverence for the Lord, in that realm, the Lord is perfect. The devotees are perfect. Their service and their love for Him are perfect, pure, completely pure. Not a speck, not an atomic trace of any material tendency there. Completely, pristinely pure. However, when we come to Mathura and Dwarka, the form of the Lord, the mood that He has, the devotees there, the quality of their devotion to Him, the nature of their pastimes are more perfect. So there's Purna, which means complete. There's Purnatara, which means more complete. And when we come to Goloka Vrindavan, which is the home of Sri Krishna, where he sports and frolics with his friends and the cows and the gopis, as an ordinary village cowherd boy, that is the pinnacle of perfection. No other realm of existence can witness such perfection in every aspect of spiritual life. Beauty, mercy, love, happiness, the quality of the devotees, the quality of the pastimes, the very form and the mood that Sri Krishna has in Vrindavan, unparalleled, completely unique. Therefore, Vrindavan is very, very special. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to not just give us solutions to the problems of birth and death. Yes, you can get that even by going to Vaikuntha. You can get that definitely by going to Dwarka and Mathura. But specifically, he has come to give us that supreme relish of the taste of the mellows of Vrindavan. So when we hear about these pastimes and we meditate on them, we read them, and we make it a regular practice to absorb our consciousness in these beautiful pastimes as they unfurl on the plane of the material world that Krishna has brought down, that the spiritual world has been brought down to the material plane. But only apparently it's the material plane, because Krishna's pastimes do not happen on the material realm. So even though Vrindavan may appear to be like an ordinary mundane place, but it is not so. It is actually directly the spiritual world. The same Vrindavan that's there in the transcendental realm, it appears here. Srila Prabhupada uses the term facsimile. The exact same Vrindavan Dham appears here. And then Krishna comes down here, performs his beautiful pastimes, and he does so not only to relish that rasa, that taste, that mellow with his devotees, but also he leaves behind for us a vast repertoire of pastimes which we can think about, hear about, read about, and then we become inspired and enlivened to surrender to him, and we develop that strong desire to go to Vrindavan in the spiritual world. We make that the ultimate aspiration of our life. So it is very nice for us as devotees to make it a habit to read these pastimes. Not just pastimes, we must also read the philosophy. Bhagavad Gita is the foundation. We must understand the foundational concepts given in Bhagavad Gita. Then we will be able to relish the pastimes of Krishna better. So there's Tattva and there is Leela. Tattva means the philosophy, the truths, and Leela are the pastimes. Even though Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he doesn't like to play God. He just likes to be a cowherd boy. He likes to frolic and play and jump and dance and steal butter and do all of these things, just like an ordinary human boy. And that is what makes the pastimes of Vrindavan so relishable and sweet. It's not simply that Krishna steals butter in Vrindavan and that's why everything becomes so glorious. Many children are also very attractive, and everybody loves children. There are many children who speak in broken language. They also steal a few things here and there. Everybody enjoys it. But if Krishna's pastimes were merely like that, then what would be the difference between Krishna and an ordinary child of this world? The point is that Krishna performs these ordinary human-like pastimes even though he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the point. He is the possessor of supreme opulence, power, knowledge, everything. And still, he chooses to come into Vrindavan and play like an ordinary boy. So the most powerful personality in all of existence wants to play as if he is helplessly dependent on those whom he loves. His mother and father, Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, his boyfriends, the cowherd boys, and the gopis, etc. So the pastimes of Vrindavan at the different ages that Krishna performed them are very, very enchanting. And one of the very famous pastimes of Krishna is the celebrated Brahma Vimohana Leela. Brahma refers to the creator, the secondary creator of the world, of the universe. Four-headed Brahma in our universe. Vimohana means bewilderment. Leela means a pastime. So Brahma Vimohana Leela means the pastime in which Brahma was bewildered. Now we should keep in mind that Brahma is not an ordinary person like you and me. He is a jiva, he's a spirit soul undoubtedly. But he is the first guru of this universe. Of course, ultimately Krishna is the guru, but he was the first guru. He has started his sampradaya here. He was the one who made the Vedas available. He is the first disciple, the first Brahmana, the first initiated devotee in the world, in the whole universe, the senior-most devotee, most empowered. The kind of empowerment one can need to create the universe is something that is perhaps beyond our imagination. He is the most intelligent being in the whole universe. He understands the working of the universe like we could if we saw a walnut or a little fruit in the palm of our hand. That is his level of understanding, his ease with which he understands what's going on in this universe, because after all, it is his creation. And yet, that intelligent Brahma, powerful Brahma, the creator Brahma, gets thoroughly bewildered when it comes to confronting Krishna and Krishna's mystic potency. So this is a very wonderful Leela. It appears in the 13th chapter of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam and continues on into the 14th chapter, when after he has been thoroughly bewildered, then in the 14th chapter he offers his prayers. So the 13th chapter is what we will be discussing today. But a brief prelude to this pastime. As we all know, in Vrindavan from time to time, demons came in there and they caused a disturbance. They were sent by Kamsa's evil uncle, Krishna's evil uncle, Kamsa. And they all came with the intention of killing Krishna. But invariably, they got killed themselves. But because they were killed by Krishna, they were delivered. So one time, one of the associates of Kamsa came in the form of a huge snake. And his name was Agha. Agha means sin, actually. So he was sin personified. And because he was a demon, an asura, so his name was Aghasura. And he was there in Vrindavan. He sat there with his mouth wide open. He was a huge snake. And you know, in parks, children's parks, you have all these things where you have some animals with the mouth open and children walk into that and come out from the other side. You will see these in children's parks. So the boys of Vrindavan, they were barely 5 years old at that time. So they thought this was a wonderful cave to enter into and have a game. So they all entered into that cave. But actually it was the mouth of Aghasura, and Aghasura was just waiting. And then Krishna saw, oh, my friends have gone in there. This is a demon, but they've already entered now. What to do? But for Krishna, nothing is difficult. What to speak of impossible? So he said, all right, I'll join them. So Krishna went in along with the cowherd boys. And when Aghasura tried to kill them, Krishna and the cowherd boys, Krishna just burnt open his intestines from inside, and he came out. And he killed Aghasura, and they all emerged from there unscathed. So this pastime happened when Krishna was 5 years old, and he had his friends there. Shukadev Goswami in the previous chapter, that is the 12th chapter, explains to King Parikshit that even though this pastime happened when the boys, including Krishna, were 5 years old, they revealed it to others in Braja, in Vrindavan, only when they were 6 years old, exactly after 1 year. Now normally, the cowherd boys were always bubbling and very lively. And they would come back and with bated breath, they would go on breathlessly, go and describe the exploits of Krishna on that particular day. Just as little children come home and say, do you know what happened in school today? This happened, that happened. So they would come home and they would narrate the pastimes of Krishna. Today Krishna killed such and such demon in this way, and then such and such thing happened today in the forest, and there was a fire and he swallowed it, etc. So the Brajabasis, of course, they would always get worried about Krishna and about their other children. But somehow or the other, they had the confidence that Krishna would emerge unscathed, that he would never be harmed. And they would also relish hearing about his exploits, his adventures. And there were poets, professional poets in Vrindavan, who would compose poems and songs on the day's latest news. Today we have the perverted form of that in the television breaking news. You switch on the television, hope you don't, but if you do, you have breaking news for the day, such and such a thing has happened, so many people killed here, this happened there, etc. So the breaking news on television is a perverted reflection of the breaking news that the cowherd boys gave when they came back to Vrindavan, to the village, after grazing the calves in the forest. And they would tell all the elders, this is what happened today, this is the latest adventure we had today with Krishna. And just hearing this would make the Brajabasis float in an ocean of ecstasy. And when the poets and songsters had composed these songs, the Brajabasis, especially the gopis, would sing this all day long, even as they were churning butter, milking the cows, or doing their household chores. So in this way, Vrindavan is a land of complete absorption in Krishna. So Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada explains, and indeed Mahaprabhu as well, is not merely a geographical place. Vrindavan is a state of consciousness that transcends space and time. So if one is absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, Krishna's name, Krishna's pastimes, his messages, his services, then one is said to be situated in Vrindavan, even if one is physically in London or any other place in the universe. So this is what Vrindavan was all about. Now, because they were in the habit of narrating Krishna's pastimes as soon as they occurred on that very day to the Brajabasis, but on this time, on this occasion, regarding the killing of Aghasur, they delayed relaying the information to the Brajabasis by 1 whole year. That was a long time. So when King Parikshit hears this from Shukadev Goswami, that Aghasura was killed by Krishna when he was 5 years old, but the boys didn't inform the Brajabasis about it till another year had passed. So Parikshit Maharaj was curious to know, naturally, what happened? Why the delay of 1 year? And then starts the narration of the 13th chapter. Ideally, when one discusses Krishna's pastimes from the Bhagavatam, it is so nice to actually go through every verse and go through every word, but that would take a long time. So we'll try to skip through it, only perhaps going through the main verses, and otherwise I'll just describe the pastimes and the translations and the main points connected with that. So Shukadev Goswami is very happy to hear such a question. And he congratulates Maharaj Parikshit. And he says, Sadhu Prishtam Mahabhaga Tvai Bhagavatottama Yan Nutanasyashishasya Shrinvan Api Katham Muhuhu. O Uttama Bhagavat, O great devotee, O pure devotee of the Lord, Shukadev says, addressing King Parikshit, you've asked me a very, very good question. And for although you've been constantly hearing of the pastimes of the Lord, you are perceiving these activities to be newer and newer. Nutana yasi. Nutana means new. So even though Krishna's pastimes are heard again and again, but for one who has developed taste in these pastimes, he or she feels these pastimes to be nutana, nutana yasi, very new, fresh, nitya navanavayamana. Mahaprabhu would hear Prahlad Maharaj's or Dhruva Maharaj's story 108 times in succession. Sometimes when we hear pastimes, we think, oh, I've heard that before. Yes, but it's nice to keep on hearing. And so Shukadev Goswami understands that this is the sign of an advanced devotee. That the devotee, despite hearing the pastime so many times and so often, wants to continue hearing more and more, because that devotee has developed that taste. So after congratulating him, he says, yes, you are right. The pastimes of Krishna are indeed very, very relishable. The great sage Yamunacharya says, Yadavadhi mama chetaha Krishna padar vinde navanava rasa dhamman yuddhate rantumasid. He says, ever since my consciousness has got focused on Krishna and his pastimes, I am experiencing at every moment newer and newer transcendental tastes. This is the result of hearing Krishna Katha for a person who has developed taste. Now we may think, well, I don't seem to have that kind of taste. I like to hear about Krishna, but somehow the kind of taste that we are hearing here for Parikshit Maharaj, I don't think I can do it. But never mind. The process for developing that taste is to just keep doing it. Like a patient who has jaundice cannot experience the sweet taste even in a sweet foodstuff. But the solution is to keep on partaking of that sweet foodstuff, especially the sugarcane and sugarcane juice. So the more that person drinks sugarcane juice, even though it appears to be bitter in taste, although it's actually sweet, gradually the sugarcane cures the jaundice and the taste revives. As the cure progresses, there is increased sweetness in the taste that that patient experiences. In the same way, Krishna Katha is transcendental sugarcane juice, which we drink with our ears. And when we drink it with our ears, by constantly hearing it with devotion and faith, then it appears sweeter and sweeter. So, King Parikshit says, you know, Paramahamsa devotees are those who understand what the essence of life is. They are attached to Krishna in the core of their hearts. It is a nature to talk only of Krishna at every moment, as if such topics were newer and newer. Just as materialists are attached to materialistic topics, devotees are attached to topics connected to Krishna. Although the activity of the Supreme Lord are very confidential and ordinary people cannot understand this, I shall explain these most confidential things to you, my dear Maharaj Parikshit, because you are so submissive. Because Parikshit Maharaj's attitude and his understanding and his taste for Krishna Katha induced Shukadev Goswami to give himself up totally to that particular discourse. You see, when somebody is speaking Krishna Katha, or any topic actually, if the audience is receptive, then the speaker feels more enthused to continue speaking and gives off his or her best. Similarly, in Krishna Katha, if the audience is receptive, Parikshit Maharaj, Shukadev Goswami was so overwhelmed, he just wanted to give more and more. He was very pleased, and he was pleased to even reveal confidential information about the Supreme Lord, which normally is not revealed, except to one who is very, very qualified. So then, he explains, now I will tell you the secret of what happened. He said after he had killed Aghasura, Krishna brought his friends and the calves to the bank of the Yamuna. It was very beautiful there, and he spoke to them and said, "My dear friends, just see how beautiful this river bank is. The Yamuna river is flowing nearby, such a pleasing atmosphere. There are blooming lotuses which are attracting bees and birds by their aroma. And the birds are also chirping everywhere. We have the cuckoos and the peacocks and parrots and various other beautiful birds. The trees are all full of aromatic flowers, and bees are buzzing all around. So this is a perfect place for our picnic. So let's stop here. And we should rest and we should take some food." Now, Srila Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, the description of Vrindavan forest is given herewith was spoken by Krishna 5,000 years ago, and the same condition prevailed during the time of the Vaishnavacharyas 300 or 400 years ago. As has been spoken about the time of the 6 Goswamis, Kujat Kokila Hansa Sara Sakana Kirne Mayura Kule. That Vrindavan at that time was also full of these chirping birds, full of nice bees, nice beautiful trees. Unfortunately, on the external platform at least, Vrindavan has ceased to be that. Now Vrindavan has become a bustling town with all sorts of guest houses and noisy vehicles and pollution and noise and tourists and so many other disturbances. But even at the time of Srila Prabhupada, he says, the same sounds and atmosphere still prevail in the area where our Krishna Balaram temple is situated. Everyone who visits this temple is pleased to hear the chirping of the birds as described here. This was 1975. But in just these few years, these 30, 40 years, you don't so much hear chirping of birds now, especially Krishna Balaram Mandir, which is just on the road that has traffic almost 24/7. Devotees who were there with Srila Prabhupada in the early days when the temple was being constructed recall that there was no other building nearby for some distance. And across the temple there were just empty fields. Now we have all sorts of buildings and shops and what have you. So that atmosphere, at least physically, externally, doesn't appear. But we have to somehow try to look for the real Vrindavan internally. Maya will cover the real Vrindavan with all these external things to distract us, so that only those who are really qualified to penetrate the veil or the curtain of that Maya can actually understand what Vrindavan is. So Krishna said to his friends, "My dear friends, let's sit here on the riverbank and let's eat because we are hungry. And the calves can go and drink water in the river as well, and there's delicious grass available here." At this point in time, Krishna and his friends were grazing only the calves. They hadn't yet come to the point of grazing the cows. That transition happened with the major festival. That festival was Gopashtami. It's a beautiful festival. How many of you have participated in the Gopashtami festival in Vrindavan? Can you raise your hand? Oh, 50% of your life wasted. Just a joke, don't worry. It's a very charming festival. Gopashtami is the date of Krishna's initiation. Not as we have our initiation, but he was initiated into cow herding. Earlier he was a Vatsapa, a tender of calves. And after the Gopashtami festival, he became a tender of cows. Because Krishna was always pestering his father and mother. You know, I want to graze the cows. You're only giving me the calves to graze. And the elders would say, "But Krishna, you're just a little boy now. You can't handle the cows, they're huge, they're so much bigger than you. And then Krishna would slap his arms like the wrestlers do and say, don't think I'm any less. I can manage it. And then everybody would laugh. Finally, because Krishna was getting so insistent, the elders decided that this boy is so restless that if he don't do what he says, he might do something silly. You know, maybe run away into the forest or something like that. And anyway, I think he's grown up enough. He's become a little sensible now. He's not as childish as he used to be. Perhaps we should, give him the chance to graze the cows. So they had a village conference, maybe in a village hall, something like this. And all the Brajavasis sat, and Nanda Maharaj was chairing the meeting. So the latest issue of the day is that Krishna is pestering again and again, what should we do? And after a lot of discussion, all right, let's give Krishna and his friends, the chance to graze the cows. So that happened at the age of 6. After this episode happened when they went back. So meanwhile, it was just the calves. So the cowherd boys, the friends of Krishna, were very happy to accept this proposal. They allowed the calves to drink water from the river. And there was also tender green grass there. So these calves were also grazing there, relishing the grass. And then the boys, they opened up their food baskets. Their respective mothers had each given them a basket of food because they would be out all day. They would leave in the morning, early morning, and come back in the evening. So they had to have a lot of goodies and all sorts of nice foodstuffs that their mothers had prepared for them. So they were carrying their baskets. So once they sat down, they opened up their baskets. And then there was a wonderful picnic there. And Shukadev Goswami describes this picnic. How did they sit in this picnic? Like the whirl of a lotus flower surrounded by its petals and leaves, Krishna sat in the center, encircled by lines of his friends, who all looked very beautiful. Every one of them was trying to look forward toward Krishna, thinking that Krishna might look toward him. In this way, they all enjoyed their lunch in the forest. Do we have that picture? Yeah, not yet ready, right? Okay. Just setting it up? Okay, all right. So later we'll show you that picture on the screen of how Krishna was sitting with the cowherd boys and he was in the center and all the other boys were gazing at him. And the one wonderful thing that happened here, like it also happened in the Rasa Leela, it also happened in the Sankirtan pastimes of Mahaprabhu at the Rath Yatra. When someone is sitting in the center and other people are sitting surrounding him, naturally the person sitting in the center will face somebody and will have his back towards somebody. But with the cowherd boys, every one of them felt that Krishna is facing me, Krishna is looking at me. And they were all eagerly, expectantly waiting to just looking and gazing at Krishna's face. Their love for Krishna was so overwhelming, they could not think of a moment without Krishna. And for them, this was the greatest happiness of their life. They were spending time with Krishna and they were gazing at him as they sat around him. They made Krishna sit in the center. And Srila Prabhupada makes an interesting point here. He says that this present Krishna consciousness movement is an attempt to keep Krishna in the center. For if this is done, all activities will automatically become beautiful and blissful. As the boys sat there surrounding Krishna, the whole scene was very beautiful. All the boys were bright and beautiful. They were looking so happy because they were with Krishna. Krishna was also very happy. So that's the point Srila Prabhupada is making here, that if we also keep Krishna in the center in our movement, and the purport obviously is that we keep our egos aside, we keep our selfishness aside, we keep our laziness and our negligence and all of these things aside, then all of us will become blissful and happy. The atmosphere in the community of devotees will become also full of bliss. And what did they do? How did they eat their lunch? Did they have some carry-on plates or some disposable plates? What did they carry? Interesting. Among the cowherd boys, some placed their lunch on flowers, some on leaves, fruits or bunches of leaves, some actually in their baskets, some on the bark of trees, and some on rocks. This is what the children imagined to be their plates as they ate their lunch. There is a place called Bhojan Thali in Braj. For those of you who have gone to visit some of the interior places, there were some rocks that are quite flat and big. And it is said that Krishna and Balaram and the cowherd boys used these rocks as plates. So they would empty their food basket and then they would spread it out and then eat there on those stones. Some of them use leaves, etc. So just try to picture the scene of Krishna sitting there with the cowherd boys, and they're all having their food. There's a little picture of that as well. So we'll show you these three pictures. One of Aghasura, the boys entering into Aghasura's mouth. The second of Krishna sitting in the center surrounded by the cowherd boys. And the third, all of them eating and enjoying their meals. And what were they doing? Now you know the little boys and little girls, they're very mischievous. So when they sit together, they poke fun at each other, they grab each other's things. So no different with this group. So as they sat there, all the cowherd boys, Shukadev Goswami says, enjoyed their lunch with Krishna, showing one another the different tastes of the different varieties of preparations they had brought from home. Tasting each other's preparations, they began to laugh and make one another laugh. So one boy would say, look Krishna, this is what my mother gave me. Can you see this? Just see. Oh Krishna, oh that's really nice. Can I taste it? Yeah, take. Then some other boy would show it to Krishna. And then amongst themselves the boys would exchange eatables. And in this way there was such a joyous atmosphere there, and the boys were just enjoying themselves thoroughly. So they were quite jubilant as they were sitting there with Krishna. Now, Krishna was acting like an ordinary village boy. The demigods had been watching. They had come down from their Svargaloka and their higher planets, and they were behind the clouds, and they were looking down, and they were astonished. This is God, Krishna. He is Yajna Bhog. Yajna Bhog means one who accepts the offerings made in yajnas, in sacrifices. Opulent types of offerings. You know, in temples, the deities are offered, very opulent bhoga, isn't it? All sorts of delicious foodstuffs and a variety of foodstuffs are offered many, many times in a day. In Jagannath Puri, 56 times in a day. And Jagannath eats a lot. And here, Krishna is just eating ordinary food. Simple food. What kind of food? And he was eating food that is, yogurt with rice, with some pieces of fruit. And he was eating with both hands, left and right. Now generally, the etiquette in Vedic culture is you only eat with your right hand. You don't eat with the left hand. Even if you're having a piece of bread or a chapati or something, you want to, break up the chapati, you don't use the left hand, hold it in. You just break it with your, with your hand. You use your fingers. And it's quite easy if you know how to do it. So we don't use the left hand. You can use the left hand for serving if that's required. But Krishna, children don't bother about etiquette, right? So children eat any which way they want. They'll, smear things everywhere in their face. They'll spill things everywhere. So Krishna was also like that. He had the yogurt and rice in one hand, little pieces of fruit, and he was eating like this, feeding somebody. Some of the boys would feed him and he would feed somebody else. And this is the way the boys were enjoying themselves No mothers to tell them anything, to scold them, what are you doing? Eat properly, do this, do that. So they were free and they were with Krishna, so they were jubilant. So he's eating this kind of ordinary food stuff. The demigods were puzzled. How is that? And what was Krishna looking like? Shukadev Goswami describes, he sat with his flute tucked between his waist and his tight cloth on the right side. You know, on top of Krishna's dhoti, he also wears another cloth which he ties around like a sash. And he tucks in his flute on the right side between the waist and the tight cloth, so then it's fixed. Because you know, they didn't have pockets and all of that. So there were other convenient ways of carrying your belongings. And then on the left side, he had two other items of paraphernalia. There was a horn bugle, which they would blow sometimes, and there was a cow herding stick. So actually, the departure of the cowherd boys from the village of Vrindavan into the forest, and the return from the forest into Vraja, was a very colorful sight. And it was also a great musical performance that they all put on together. Krishna would play the flute, the cowherd boys would have their own bugles and their flutes. And it was a grand, celebration there. And especially for the cowherd boys, it was a celebration because they were going to be with Krishna all day long. So Krishna's clothing was like that. He had tucked in these things between his clothes, and he sat like the whirl of a lotus flower, looking forward toward all his friends, personally joking with them and creating jubilant laughter among them as he ate. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions how Krishna was joking. One of his funny friends is the Brahmana called Madhu Mangal. How many of you have heard of Madhu Mangal? He's a funny friend of Krishna, and he jokes all the time, and he's a Brahmin. So he loves eating, especially likes laddus, and when he doesn't get laddus, he gets a little agitated. So he has various threats and other things, means by which he procures what he needs. And sometimes when Krishna kills a big demon, then Madhu Mangal will come and say, Krishna, what's the big deal? Remember, I'm a Brahmin, and it's because of my blessings that you got the power to kill this demon. So you better give me some dakshina of some nice laddus. Otherwise, I tell you, next time, you'll be defeated by the demon. So this kind of humorous, banter would go on. Can you imagine God being spoken to like this? God being threatened? God eating other people's remnants and kind of joking and fun that was going on. Many others who were not acquainted with the ways of Vrindavan, they would think this is blasphemy. What are you saying? How can God do this? And indeed, even the demigods thought like that. So what to speak of ordinary people in London or Tokyo or Bombay or New York? So they were thinking, this is Yajna Bhog, the one who partakes of the remnants of sacrifice, and here he's eating ordinary food that's meant for poor people, yogurt, rice, little fruit. So they were puzzled. And then Shukadev Goswami says, are we ready? Tell me when we are ready with the pictures.
Is there?
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, what's the picture?
The boys in the picnic.
Okay, so you showed all three pictures?
Aghasura one?
Yeah, the Aghasura one?
Yeah. And then now?
Okay, so you're seeing the Aghasura picture? This is the prelude to the Brahma Vimohana Leela. So after killing Aghasura, then Krishna took the boys to the bank of the Yamuna. Now can we see the picture sitting around?
Yep.
Okay, so they are sitting there, all surrounding Krishna. So look at their jubilant expressions. They're all happy that they are with Krishna. How many of you want to play with Krishna like this? It's a nice place, Vrindavan. And then they started eating. You have the third one? The third one is about eating, right? They're all eating together?
That's the one in the back.
Okay, there were...
Yeah, so there's 4 more. And the next one is where...
Brahma appears, okay. Okay, so this is these 2 now.
Yeah.
Alright. So that was the blissful scene there. And do you see someone behind the clouds there? Does the picture show that? I don't know if it's this picture or another picture. Oh, it doesn't show that. There's another picture in which there is a curious onlooker. The demigods are there and there is Brahma on his swan carrier. And he's looking on. And he's saying, what is this? What's going on here? So anyway, the demigods were puzzled. At that time, while the cowherd boys, who knew nothing in the core of their hearts but Krishna, and they were engaged in eating their lunch, the calves somehow wandered off, being allured by the fresh, green, succulent grass. So as the cows wandered away, and the boys suddenly noticed, they got frightened. Oh my God, the calves have gone away somewhere. Where are they? There's a forest, there could be dangerous animals there, the animals could harm the calves. So Krishna, Krishna, what do we do? What do we do? We should all go and get those calves back. But because they were so much enjoying their lunch, Krishna didn't want to spoil the fun. He said, no, all of you just enjoy your lunch. I'll go on, I'll find the calves and I'll bring them back, don't worry. So Shukdev Goswami says that Krishna is the fear, is the personification of love, but at the same time, even fear personified is afraid of him. Actually, there is a nice verse, Bhishasmad vatah pavite, Bhisho deti suryaha, Bhishasmad agnischandrascha, Mrityu dhavati panchamaha. The meaning of this verse is that it's out of fear of the Supreme Lord only that the wind blows, the sun shines, the moon shines, and even death is chasing everybody. So when the cowherd boys were frightened like that, Krishna, of whom even fear personified is afraid, immediately reassured them and told them, my dear friends, don't worry, you please eat your food. I will go back and bring the calves here personally. So it means that in the presence of Krishna's friendship, a devotee has nothing to fear. Indeed, this is one of the symptoms of Krishna consciousness. Bhajahure mana Sri Nandanandana Abhaya Charana Ravindare. So when one is Krishna conscious, one perceives the presence of Krishna in one's life all the time. One never feels alone. So a devotee will never feel lonely or should not feel lonely if he or she experiences the presence of Krishna in his or her life. One of the symptoms of knowledge, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, is abhayam. Abhayam sattva samshuddhihi, jnana yoga vyavasthitihi, etc. And abhayam means fearlessness. And a devotee is fearless because that devotee understands and has firm faith that I am not alone. Krishna is always with me. Rakshishyati iti vishvaso. Krishna will always protect me. So this is the consciousness of a devotee. So Krishna says, I will go and search for the cows. Don't disturb your enjoyment. And then continuing to carry the pieces of fruit and the yogurt and rice in both hands, he walked into the forest. And as he was searching, he wandered here and there, here and there. In the mountains, he walked in the caves, the bushes, the narrow passages. He walked everywhere. But somehow or the other, he didn't find the calves. In the Upanishads, it is mentioned, Na tasya karanam karyam cha vidyate, swabhaviki jnana bala kriyacha. The Supreme Absolute Truth has no obligation to perform any activity. Whenever he wants to do something, just by his mere desire, those activities happen. It's not so for us. We have to make plans, we have to work very hard. But for the Supreme Absolute Truth, there is nothing that he needs to do. He has infinite energies at his disposal, ever willing at his beck and call, at his very thought, to fulfill his every desire. So then, Krishna, why would he go to such lengths to please his devotees? He who is not obliged to anything and anyone, he who has no duty in this world, personally takes on the onerous task of going into the forest, searching for the calves everywhere, in the mountains, in the caves. This is a sign of the love that Krishna has for his devotees. The reciprocal relationship between Krishna and the devotees is very enchanting. It is not a one-way thing. Inasmuch as the devotees love Krishna, Krishna also loves the devotees. Inasmuch as the devotees are willing to sacrifice anything for Krishna, Krishna is also willing to do the same. So Krishna took on the trouble and said, I'll go and look in the forest. And as he went, he could not find the calves. Shukadev Goswami continues that Brahma, who resides in the highest planet of the universe, had observed the most powerful Krishna killing Aghasura and delivering Aghasura, and he was astonished. Now that the same Brahma wanted to show some of his own power and to see the power of Krishna, he, in his absence, in Krishna's absence, did something. Now Brahma had been watching in amazement. This little boy, God, and then on top of that, he's eating such ordinary food, rice, yogurt, little fruit, eating with both hands, no etiquette, wandering here and there in the forest, joking with these village boys. And when he saw the killing of Aghasura, he was astonished, and he wanted to see the glories of Krishna. He wanted to see an exhibition of Krishna's mystic powers. At the same time, there was a mixture of some pride in him, and he also wanted to demonstrate his own mystic power. So he thought, let me play a little trick on Krishna. A very dangerous thing to do. We have to be very careful on whom you play tricks in life, yes? You have to choose your victims very carefully. If you know the victim very well and you won't be misunderstood and there's no danger to you, then it's all right. But if you trick someone else, then you're going to be in trouble. So Brahma didn't know what he was getting into. So what did he do? When the calves wandered away into the forest, as Krishna and the cowherd boys were sitting there, he, by his mystic powers, kidnapped those calves and took them to a cave and hid them there. And when Krishna went to look after the calves, Brahma took away the cowherd boys by his mystic power and placed them also in that same cave. So when Krishna came back, he didn't find the cowherd boys there. So Brahma entangled himself in the activities of Krishna. Prabhupada says in the purport that Brahma was very astonished by seeing the killing of Aghasura by Krishna. And then when he saw that Krishna was enjoying his pastimes of lunch, he was even more astonished and wanted to test whether Krishna was actually there. Srila Prabhupada also mentions that even though Brahma is such an exalted soul, but he has a material birth. Brahma's birth, though material, is still extraordinary. Do you know why? He doesn't have a normal father and a mother. We all are born because of a father and a mother. But Brahma was born from the lotus. So therefore, he has no human being who is a father and mother. But still his birth was material, because the lotus from which he was born is a material lotus. It represents the material universe. So Srila Prabhupada says that anyone who is born, who has a material birth, is subject to the 4 defects. One has a tendency to be illusioned, one has imperfect senses, one has a tendency to commit mistakes, one has a tendency to cheat. So therefore, even though Brahma is the topmost living entity in the universe, he also was now going to get bewildered, was going to get illusioned, because he thought he could bewilder Krishna. He thought he could play a trick on Krishna by hiding the calves and the cowherd boys. By the way, Yanikinath Prabhu, when do we break? I go on till what time?
Maharaj, it's up to you. Lunch will be at 1:15.
1:15. So there's refreshments at the back. What's that supposed to be for?
That's whenever the break is. So
Break meaning at 1:15.
no, in between now and lunch.
Okay, so we'll break now, and they can refresh and we'll continue. Okay, all right. So just as the cowherd boys were still having their meals, you can also take a little bit of refreshment, but just as the calves wandered away, don't wander away anywhere. Just come back very soon and we'll start. Okay, so Brahma, being eager to test Krishna, being eager to examine whether Krishna was actually there, whether he is the Supreme Lord, and he also wanted to see an exhibition of the glories of Krishna's mystic opulences. He also had a bit of a desire to exhibit his own mystic powers. But because Brahma, however exalted though he may be, still has a material birth and therefore was subject to bewilderment, he was up against something that he had not bargained for. He kidnapped the boys and the calves, hid them in a cave. Actually, an interesting point here, the Acharyas have commented, and Srila Prabhupada mentions this in his purport. Actually, the boys, the residents of Vrindavan, are all spiritual. Their bodies are spiritual. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitadis, as Brahma himself says in the Brahma Samhita. So these are not ordinary boys, and the gopis are not ordinary girls. Neither are Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, and the elder gopas and gopis. They're all spiritual beings. So spirituality is not within the grip or the grasp of matter. One cannot try to attain anything spiritual by material means. Material consciousness cannot overcome the spiritual. Ravana, Srila Prabhupada explains, was demoniac. And he kidnapped who he thought was Sita Devi, the wife of Lord Ram. But she is directly the goddess of fortune. How can a materialistic person like Ravana be able to even touch the body of Sita, who is completely transcendental? How can the material contact the spiritual in this way? It's not possible. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu elsewhere has taught that actually it was a Maya Sita that Ravana kidnapped, not the actual Sita. The actual Sita was hidden and protected by Agni, the god of fire. And when Ram defeated Ravana and brought back this Maya Sita, then the original Sita was brought out. The Maya Sita entered the fire and the original Sita came out from the fire. So Mahaprabhu explains this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Srila Prabhupada says, just as material things cannot come in touch with the spiritual objects, so even though Brahma certainly is not a demon, he is a very exalted soul, he is a great devotee, he is our Acharya, very intelligent, etc. But at that time, because his motivation was not totally right, he was trying to overwhelm or overcome Krishna. Now that mentality can be there only for the residents of Vrindavan. When the cowherd boys wrestle with each other, then Krishna submits, and sometimes the cowherd boys are able to defeat Krishna, and Krishna is punished. And sometimes Krishna has to carry these boys on his shoulders as a punishment. That goes on the platform of extreme love. That level of sweetness and intimacy which is found only in Vrindavan, as I was mentioning in the beginning of the talk. And those who are not familiar with the ways of Vrindavan simply get astonished when they see how Krishna interacts with his devotees in Braja. So this was even beyond the thinking of Brahma. So when someone who is not in the mood of Vrindavan tries to overwhelm Krishna, and the motivation is not pure love, then there is no way you can overwhelm Krishna. So how is it possible that Krishna, that Brahma was able to take away the actual calves and the cowherd boys? So Srila Prabhupada explains, actually he took away Maya forms or illusory forms of the cowherd boys and the calves. He was not able to touch the real calves and the real cowherd boys. So the boys and the calves that he kidnapped and hid in a cave were basically Maya, products of Maya, not the real ones. And Brahma is going to find out all of this much later, to his utter amazement. So in this way, Brahma, having done this, now returns to his abode. And Brahma is thinking, now let's see what happens. I've tricked Krishna, and let's see what Krishna does. So he went back to his abode. In the meanwhile, Krishna, being unable to find the calves, even though he had wandered in many places in the forest, was puzzled, apparently. He returned to the spot where they were all sitting before, and he didn't find the cowherd boys there as well. And he began to search for both the calves and the boys. Initially, he could not understand what had happened. Why is it that the all-knowing, omniscient, Supreme Personality of Godhead does not know what has happened? He knows past, present, future. He is in the heart of everyone, including Brahma. How could he not know? The answer is that in order to make Krishna's pastimes more relishable and sweet, there is a requirement or a necessity that this self-conception of Godhood, of supreme power and omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, etc., be clouded or eclipsed for some time. You see, the pastimes of Vrindavan are usually not possible when there is a conception of Godhood of Krishna, either from Krishna's side or from the residents of Vrindavan, from their side. You know, in the pastime of Mother Yashoda tying Krishna to the grinding mortar, Krishna actually began to cry. His eyes became very fearful, and the mascara from his eyes, the black ointment was getting smeared on his face. And he had such a fearful expression on his face that Mother Yashoda felt sorry for him, and she dropped the stick She had carried a stick to just threaten him to beat him, but she dropped it seeing his facial expression. So the question arises that was Krishna really afraid at that time? He is God. He is all-powerful. And as we just discussed earlier, even fear personified is afraid of him. The whole universe functions out of fear of him. So, was he play acting with Mother Yashoda? Was he just making a show of becoming fearful? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, no, he wasn't making a show. He was actually fearful. A point to ponder about. The Supreme Personality of Godhead was actually fearful. And how was that possible? Because he subjected himself by his own free, sweet will to the influence of his Leela Shakti. That Shakti or the power of his that facilitates his sweet pastimes in Vrindavan. Because if he didn't do this, if he didn't superimpose his own power upon himself, he would not have been able to relish this Vatsalya Ras, this beautiful exchange between the child and the mother, which is what Krishna wants to do. He is Rasika Shekhar. He is the crest jewel amongst those who relish transcendental mellows. In order that Krishna also experience that bliss of maternal love. Sometimes the mother scolds the child, punishes the child. So Krishna wants to experience that and relish it. He relishes it when his devotees actually think themselves superior to him. But this is possible only in Vrindavan, mind you, nowhere else. Everywhere else it would be offensive. But in Vrindavan, he loves it when his devotees actually think they are better than him, they're more powerful than him, and when they think that Krishna is dependent on them, as Mother Yashoda thinks that if I don't look after Krishna, he's going to fall sick, harm will come to him, etc. And Krishna enjoys this. So therefore, even here, as Krishna was wandering around with a little yogurt and rice and a little fruit here and there, maybe eating a little bit, going, where are the calves? Where are the calves? Just like any other ordinary boy. And he comes back, oh, where are the boys? Where have they gone? So he's playing the part, not just enacting it. It is a dramatic performance, undoubtedly, but it is a kind of dramatic performance in which the actor has so deeply entered into the spirit of the role that the actor forgets his own identity. Let's say the actor is playing the role of a king. Actually, he's not a king, but only on the stage he's playing the king. But there's a very emotional scene going on, and the actor is so absorbed in that role that he forgets who he is in the outside world. That's a good actor. So similarly, the Leelas of the Lord are nothing but transcendental dramas going on. It's one big, eternal, transcendental drama that happens, that is eternally going on. And Krishna is relishing this. So he wants to experience that ordinary feeling of being a cowherd boy and not being God. So he came back, and initially, of course, it seemed that he did not understand what was going on. Prabhupada says here in the purport, Krishna could immediately understand that Brahma had taken away both the calves and the boys, but as an innocent child, he searched here and there so that Brahma could not understand. Understand Krishna's Maya. This was all a dramatic performance. A player knows everything, but still he plays on the stage in such a way that others do not understand him. Then Shukadev Goswami says, when Krishna was unable to find the calves and the boys anywhere in the forest, he suddenly understood that this was the work of Lord Brahma. So now his Leela Shakti is again lifted the veil for just that moment, so he understands. As God, he is all-knowing. So then immediately he understands, oh, it's Brahma. Okay. So Brahma has done this mischief. He is Vishvavit, one who knows everything in the universe, whatever is happening. But because he is playing as an innocent child, he feigns ignorance of sorts, and that helps in the pastime. So Brahma was already bewildered by seeing Krishna's pastimes, and now he was going to get even more bewildered. And then Shukadev Goswami explains, just in order to create pleasure, both for Brahma as well as for the mothers of the cows and the cowherd boys, Krishna, the creator of the entire cosmic manifestation, did something most wonderful and extraordinary. He expanded himself as those calves and cowherd boys who had been kidnapped by Brahma. Now, it's noteworthy here that Krishna did this for many reasons. Number one, he did this for Brahma's pleasure. Did Krishna feel offended? No, he knows Brahma is my devotee. He is my disciple. I initiated him. So he has a lot of affection for Brahma. And Brahma certainly wasn't evil like Ravana was. He was just trying to think, he just got a little carried away with his own mystic powers. And he also wanted to examine Krishna's potency, and he wanted to see for himself, because he had not experienced Vrindavan before. So Krishna loves him, and he's a dear devotee. So Krishna says, okay, let me also give pleasure to my dear devotee Brahma, who's up to a few tricks now, okay, but he'll be all right soon. And I'll show my mercy to him so he understands my mystic potency. And Brahma will be enlightened by this pastime. And Brahma indeed at the end was stunned in ecstasy at the end of the whole pastime. So Brahma developed an intense sense of joy and appreciation for Krishna. His devotion also further grew. And also he wanted to give pleasure to the mothers of the cowherd boys and the calves. So he expanded himself into each of these cowherd boys and calves in a perfect way. Shukadev Goswami describes that every aspect of the physical appearance of the cows and the calves, also the particular mannerisms, the style of speaking, every single detail was exactly as in the original. So when Krishna expanded, he became exactly like every single calf and every single cowherd boy, down to the minutest detail. So much so that nobody, not even their own mothers, could recognize that this was not their son. And normally, who knows the child the best? The mother. And if there's any slight change also, the mother is able to discern that. But in this case, so perfect was the impersonation that Krishna did. He made duplicates of himself that was so completely identical to the originals that nobody, not even Balaram, could understand that. And this was Balaram's birthday actually. So Balaram wasn't present there. Otherwise he would have got hold of it, what's going on. He would have caught on very soon. But because it was Balaram's birthday, so his mother Rohini had kept him back home just to have some ceremonies and something for auspiciousness for the boy, some prayers, special prayers for his protection and this and that, some celebration. And the boys would come back in the evening, perhaps they would have some birthday party, but they wouldn't chant happy birthday, they wouldn't chant happy. So Balaram didn't come, so he was unaware. So Shukadev Goswami describes here how Krishna impersonated these boys. Krishna simultaneously expanded himself into the exact number of missing cowherd boys and calves with their exact bodily features, their particular types of hands, legs and other limbs, their sticks, bugles and flutes, their lunch bags, their particular types of dress and ornaments placed in various ways, their names, ages and forms, their special activities and characteristics. By expanding himself in this way, beautiful Krishna proved the statement, Samagra Jagat Vishnu Mayam, Lord Vishnu is all-pervading. So can you imagine this scene, this kind of duplication? Who can do it except Krishna? So expanding himself so as to appear as all the calves and cowherd boys, all of them as they were, and at the same time appear as their leader, Krishna entered Vrajabhumi, the land of his father, as he usually did while enjoying their company. So as if nothing had happened, Krishna kept quiet about it, didn't reveal it to anyone. So now every single calf and every single cowherd boy who returned to Vrindavan at the end of that day was Krishna. Is not the calf, not the cowherd boy. Even the calves were all Krishna. Every single one of them were exactly Krishna, but they looked like the calf or the cowherd boy. And Krishna, all the Krishnas kept quiet. Every single calf and every single cowherd boy, including Krishna, didn't. Mum was the word. They never uttered anything. Because this was preparation for the final culmination of the whole pastime. If they had revealed it now, the fun would have been lost. So this went on like this. And even Baladev didn't understand what was going on. And then as the cows came back to Vrindavan, the village, they went back to their respective cowsheds. And the boys went back to their respective homes. In their respective cowsheds and homes, their mothers, their respective mothers, welcomed them back, not noticing any difference. They looked exactly like their sons. And as they went there, as they returned, that's mentioned, beautiful description by Shukadev Goswami. It shows what kind of affection they had, even though they didn't notice a difference in the appearance and mannerisms, etc. of the children, but somehow there was something different. What was different? They were feeling some special extra love for their sons, which they had not felt before. Something very mysterious was happening. The mothers of the boys, upon hearing the sounds of the flutes and the bugles being played by their sons, immediately rose from their household tasks, lifted their boys onto their laps, embraced them with both arms and began to feed them with their breast milk, which flowed forth because of extreme love, specifically for Krishna. And Krishna now was a child. So Krishna and the calves, they drank this milk as if it was a nectarian beverage, which indeed it was. So now actually, Krishna was giving the opportunity to all these cows and the gopis to become his mother. This had been an aspiration and ambition for many of the older gopis and for the cows. They were all happy that they had their own sons, but they were thinking, oh, I wish Krishna was my son. Mother Yashoda is so lucky. She has Krishna and she is able to feed Krishna her breast milk. She is able to take care of him, etc. But I wish I could have that opportunity. So Krishna always fulfills the desires of his devotees. So in this case too, he fulfilled their desire. This is how he gave pleasure to them. So these older gopis of Vrindavan are very high in the order of devotees, in the hierarchy of devotees in the Vatsalya Ras. Vatsalya Ras is the mellow of parental affection for Krishna. Some days ago we were speaking about the prayers of Queen Kunti, and we were mentioning there that the topmost in the hierarchy of devotees in the Vatsalya Ras is Mother Yashoda. Second is Nanda Maharaj. Third is Mother Rohini, the mother of Balaram. And number 4 are these older gopis of Vrindavan, who got the opportunity to become Krishna's mother. For how long? 1 whole year. For 1 whole year, they were actually the mother of Krishna. So Krishna fulfilled their desires in ways that they could never have dreamt of. And initially, and right till the end, they did not know that their son, or the person, the child they thought was their son, was actually Krishna for this 1 year. Even though they were feeling some difference, but nobody in the right minds would have thought that this would be Krishna. How is that possible? So the elder gopis had all their desires fulfilled now, not just for 1 day, but for 1 full year. And this whole thing is a creation of Yoga Maya, Srila Prabhupada explains. And then all the mothers, they got a chance to serve Krishna to their heart's content. What did they do? They fed them, they decorated them. All these boys who came, Shukadev Goswami says, the mothers took care of the boys by massaging them with oil, bathing them, smearing their bodies with sandalwood pulp, decorating them with ornaments, chanting protective mantras, decorating their body with tilak, and giving them food. In this way, the mothers served Krishna personally. And this happened every single day. Krishna followed the usual routine of activities that used to happen before. They would leave in the morning, come back after grazing the cows in the evening. There would be a certain pattern of activities. That continued, uninterrupted. Similarly, the cows entered the different sheds and began mooing loudly, calling for their respective calves. When the calves arrived, their mothers began licking the calves' bodies again and again and profusely feeding them with the milk flowing from their milk bag. So inasmuch as the gopis were fortunate, so were the cows. These cows are not ordinary living beings. They got a chance to actually become the mother of Krishna. What an exalted privilege. And now here is the special feature. Previously, Shukadev Goswami says, from the very beginning the gopis had motherly affection for Krishna. Indeed, their affection for Krishna exceeded even their affection for their own sons. In displaying their affection, they had thus distinguished between Krishna and their son. But now that distinction disappeared. Vrindavan is probably the only place in the entire creation where the mothers would love Krishna more than their own children. Yes? Generally, it is natural that a mother will love her own child, even if that mother is a devotee. But in Vrindavan, the mothers on this particular occasion, starting from that one fateful day, they realize there's something different. Although the boys are looking exactly the same, they are my sons, but the love that I'm feeling for my son is equal to that I'm feeling for Krishna. Whereas earlier, the love that I felt for my son was a little less than the love I felt for Krishna. There's something strange here. How has that happened? So they were a little puzzled about it, but they weren't complaining. They went ahead serving Krishna. And what's also remarkable is that because every other boy, cowherd boy, who was the same age as Krishna, was also Krishna, So these gopis felt the same amount of love for these other boys as well, not just for their own sons. Now generally, everyone loves small kids, and you love it, but you love your own kids more. But in this case, not only did the gopis love their sons as much as they loved Krishna, they also loved the other boys as much as they loved Krishna and as much as they loved their own son. So strange things were happening in Vrindavan. And the gopis were relishing this kind of mood. And then time went on. For 1 year, the pastimes continued. The affection for their sons increased continuously for 1 year. There was no limit to the increment of their affection for their sons who were now Krishna. Every day, Shukadeva Goswami says, they found new inspiration for loving their children as much as they loved Krishna. In this way, Lord Krishna, having become the cowherd boys and the calves, maintained himself by himself. He continued his pastimes both in Vrindavan and in the forest for 1 year. Prabhupada's purport is interesting. Everything was Krishna. The cows were Krishna, the cowherd boys were Krishna, and the maintainer himself was also Krishna. So can you imagine this whole situation? Just picture the whole scenario in Vrindavan. And then something happened. And even Balaram started thinking, something's not right here. Something's happening. Do you want to know what happened? If you do, you will have to come back after the lunch break and then wait. So this will ensure that you come back. It's a very interesting phase of the whole pastime. Now Balaram is just coming, just 5 or 6 days before the whole year had elapsed. Balaram was thinking, something is wrong here. I can't put a finger to it, but there's something happening. What is going on here? And then some incident happens in Vrindavan, which makes Balaram understand. So if you want to know that, quickly have your lunch, prasadam, and come back here. At what time, Janakinath Prabhu? 2:30. Okay.